All right. Welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled Continual Improvement. Oh yes, I have lots of ideas. What's next? Hopefully I put a little juice into that title. I'm pleased to announce Rina Brembut, an experienced IT professional, big advocate for ITSM, especially continual improvement. I'd say I'm actually particularly excited about this webinar because a lot of times people ask me, well, what practice or process should I start with? Should I start with incident, change, problem? Like, no, really what you should start with is continual improvement, right? Because you want to know where you're at and what you need to do to go forward. Then you can decide what are maybe the other practices that will support that continual improvement effort. So love continual improvement. I think it's an undervalued, implemented practice within an organization. A little bit about Rina. She's worked for such firms as Atos, Post Office Ltd, in the UK version, basically of USPS for New York City agencies and Gardner. She's the founder of Mavaa, a boutique IT consulting firm specializing in ServiceNow implementation. I imagine a lot of people on the call here are ServiceNow shop, so that's great. And also in ITSM training. In her spare time, she works as an adjunct professor at Turo University, where she teaches enterprise architecture, service, and project management. Might have to have you come back to talk about EA, hot topic. So the presentation will follow this format. It'll last about 30 minutes, and we have plenty of time left over for Q&A. We'll have plenty of time during the presentation for you to ask questions. And everyone will be on mute. So if you want to ask a question, either use the Q&A feature and I'll monitor your questions, or if you want to talk out loud, just use the raise hand feature. I'll take you off mute. And then when you're done with the question, I'll put you back on mute. It's going to be highly interactive, so we encourage you to ask questions as they come up. And then, of course, if you want to chat with each other, we encourage you to use the chat window to just interact with each other. It's another value of being in these sort of webinars, that you get to talk to your peers. And then finally, the webinar is being recorded and will be available on the ITSM Google website within 5 business days. Okay, I'm done with my spiel. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rina.
Thank you, Mitch. And can I please ask you a small favor if you are able to present the slides? Unfortunately, my computer Zoom did not join, so I'm just on a phone. Is that okay with you?
Yeah,
okay,
give
great.
me one quick second. I have it saved
here. Sure.
We'll pause for this brief commercial interruption.
Okay.
And then just obviously let me know when you want me to advance the slides. So
Sure. We can just be right now on just the heading.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly save it as a PDF because I find the presenting PDF is a lot easier than trying to manipulate the presenter mode and the editing mode. So I have it here.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Either a thumbs up or some other acknowledgement. You can see it, right? Okay, cool.
Yep, we can see it. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this 2-part webinar about continual improvement. So I'm just looking at the participant list, and give or take, we have 21 people. It's fair to say, the people who are here are interested in learning more about continual improvement and actually getting some practical tips on how to improve, how to improve what we do, and how do I actually go about putting this as a structure. So when I reached out to Mitch, that was probably 2-3 months ago, I think, if I recall, Mitch, they say, hey, I'm interested in coming and doing the presentation. And he sent the link and say, hey, we had someone, I think it was Vicky Rogers, doing a continual improvement, like a CSI, and why don't you have a look and see, what else, something different? We don't want to do the same thing, sure thing. So we kind of put our heads together and say, okay, what can be valuable for this audience? And as we were chatting, we kind of talked about one of my experience, which is, when you change role, you go to a new team or you join a new company, and you go in and automatically you think, oh, I can improve this and I can do this and I can do that. And very early on, I didn't know how to navigate, sort of those relationships. So I would just be very open and direct, like, oh, we're doing it like this. I think we could do this, and I think that would improve. And it didn't go down very well. And you can see why, right? Like if if I was running my team for like 2+ years and someone walking in is like, hey, I think you can do it like this. I'm like, whoa, hang on, you just got here. So I thought, what would have helped me in that situation, that if there was sort of, some cultural norm, some process, some maybe, written manifesto that, this is how we improve things and all ideas are welcome and come and talk to this person. And this is how we go about, you know, definitely would have avoided some roadblocks for me very early on. So I thought, I think this is what we should focus on for today's presentation. So first thing I would like to do is, before we go into our discussion, I would like to start with some questions. And so Mitch, if it's okay, we can do the poll now. And the first one is, and this is for all the attendees. And if you want to sort of, share your answer with the group, feel free to, we can unmute them. But when did you last suggest an improvement idea at your workplace? And it's an open text, write as much as you want. We'll give you like a minute or so. And, if you want to sort of, share your answer, feel free to just raise your hand and we can unmute you. So I'm just going to mute myself for a minute and let's see what people have to say. It doesn't have to be something recent or in your job. It could be personally, it could be for your volunteer organization, anything and everything you can think of. Like, when did you last suggest an improvement idea?
So just let you know, we're about 50% participated. So we have a pretty good response so far.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And then you want to talk through the answers, but then you want me to show the answers towards the end of the webinar?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good,
Yes,
enough.
please.
Okay,
yep.
Got it.
Okay. Let's go to the next question. So this is 2-part questions, okay?
I'll go ahead and end the poll then. So
thank you.
I'll go ahead and bring up the other one and grab I have a lot of windows open here. Okay. Oops. There you go. Sorry. All right. Here we go. Here's the second poll.
Thank you. So the next one is, do you have a formal CI practice in your organization? And if yes, what tools and methods do you use?
Let's give people a little more time on this one. It's a long answer. So.
Yep. Like give or take like 2 to 3 minutes. And when I say formal, means, it's known, everyone's agreed. There are sort of clear directions. There are dedicated responsibilities, shared responsibilities. Like, it's not like, oh, we have this person who's got like a lot of ideas and they always improve things. Like, we're really looking for formal structure in place.
Yeah, I think I'm laughing at JJ's response because I think most of us have an informal. I mean, I have a spreadsheet that I've been using for years, even at my old institution, and it works. I mean, is it great? No, but can everyone put ideas on there and review it together and move it through various states? Yes. So, but as far as a formal practice, I think we'll be challenged to see a lot of good responses there.
Yeah. And that won't be a surprise because generally that's kind of the common practice. It's afterthought. So we have 1 more minute and then we'll go dive into the presentation.
Yeah, we're about 39%, so 43%. So maybe a couple more seconds just to jump in there.
Sure. And I think if you have no, feel free to write no, so at least that gives some indication.
There you go. Yeah, JJ did that in chat. So thanks for doing that. All right. If it's all right with you, I'll go ahead and end the poll.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then, like I said, we'll share these results later on.
Okay. So I do speak fast. So if it gets too fast, just nudge me and I'll slow down. But if you are, my assumption is that audience is familiar with ITIL and ITIL service management. If you are, you probably have heard of continual improvement. If you haven't, no big deal. ITIL really champions, what continual improvement is. It's kind of like in the latest version of ITIL, they have continual improvement as a practice, and they also have that as kind of framework model that you can use to implement continual improvement in your organization. So for today's webinar, I have picked 4 different kind of, industry standard best practice things you are likely to see when people refer to continual improvement. So let's look at those. So the purplish one, the one you see on sort of like both sides, right and left, those are right out of ITIL textbook. And we're going to talk about the first one. So the first one is, it's part of the service value system, which is kind of like a big umbrella within ITIL framework. And underneath, you have kind of like a small, I don't want to say baby framework, but it's kind of like that. Like there's like a big umbrella, and underneath is like a subtopics. So, and continual improvement is one of them. Of course, I could talk about the other one as well, but today's webinar is focused on continual improvement. It's really important part of your service delivery, and it is recommended that you apply this across all the phases. And what I mean by that is, it's not something you do in silo. It's not something you do in operations. It's not something you do, if you're familiar with Agile, like you have a sprint and then you have sprint retro. And sprint retro is a place where you talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what we can improve on, etc., etc. In ITIL, it's a little different. It's not like an afterthought. It is something you continuously do as you move across different life cycles. For example, it is at the ideation, it is at the initiation, it is at the planning, it is at the implementation, it is even when you actually decommission your service. So let's say for our institute, we have an example where you have a request where you need a new application for online instruction, for statistical. You need that for faculties, you need that for students, and you are a multi-campus institute. So it's like maybe you're in New York, you're in Texas, you're in North Carolina, you're in New Hampshire, located across USA. So, there is a debate going on within the team, like what are we going to do? Are we going to purchase like something off the shelf, or are we going to build a custom solution? And so first thing, obviously, you guys will be doing is like, okay, before we even get there, why don't we just gather the requirements? As you start gathering the requirements, it becomes pretty obvious that every campus has different requirement. Obviously, the level at this is being taught is different. Graduate might look different than master's or MBA or PhD students. Maybe all campuses aren't offering all those classes. Maybe some of them are just offering introduction, etc., etc. So someone might say, well, given everyone has so many different requirements, I think it makes sense to just go ahead and purchase different solution for different campuses, right? That's one idea. I mean, there's no right or wrong. Whereas you might have one person in your team who says, well, that's what we've always done. And that's why we end up with, sort of more expense, more management, no consistency, etc., etc. How about we gather all the requirements, we come up with like a universal must-have feature, which is being used across all the campuses, and then we can take it from there. That's a really simple example of continual improvement, right? It's like, yeah, actually, that makes sense. Like we've always done this, and hence we might end up spend more money, more management, more man hours. So why don't we do this? Let's put the whole thing together. Let's see what are the common features and requirements everyone needs. And then we'll decide. Now, if you have 100 requirements and 80% of those are the same, I think it makes sense to have one, and then probably just understand those 20%, like, are those absolute must, or they're just nice to have, and perhaps we find some workaround, right? And you know what? I'm confident that you probably have seen those kind of things happening in your workplace. You may just not call that a continual improvement. Now, if you don't call that a continual improvement, what's the danger? Well, if there is team dynamics and relationships in place, the person who's has this idea is going to be like, vocal that, okay, yeah, I think we should do this, and everyone will understand and, move on. If this person is new and like, oh, no, you don't really understand, they'll make complaint and and it may not go anywhere. So that's one example here for you, something for you to think about and sort of say, okay, how this is going to help my organization. The next one I want to look at is some people might call this, Mitch, stay on the same side. The next the next model. So some people might call this PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. This is a very famous Deming cycle. Some people may be familiar, some may not be. Like if you are familiar, give thumbs up. So I know like what level of detail I need to go through it. If not, I'm happy to talk about everything I have prepared. But how this model works is like sort of like, we plan for it. So like, okay, if we're doing something, first let's identify what the problem is, and then we're going to have to think about doing something about it. So let's shortlist possible like solutions we can have for it, and then checking is, okay, if we were to implement those possible solutions, is it going to resolve the problem? Is it going to maybe reduce the problem? Sometimes maybe you can't completely eradicate, but you can reduce the impact of it. And then last but not least is kind of acting and sort of like, okay, I've done planning, I've done the doing, I've done the checking. Did I get what I was looking for? Maybe I got 50% of what I was looking for. What more can I do? It's a really famous cycle, and I think you can sort of like use it in your personal life as well if you want to like plan, do, check, act, a simple scenario. So for this particular framework, I thought of an example, and this is kind of a real life something I had experienced with the previous university I worked with. So they had a specific location in their campus where there was no stable Wi-Fi. Everyone knew about it, that this is a known issue. And they like, oh yeah, it's on a roadmap. Yes, when we do the network upgrade, we're going to be taking care of it. And for one reason or another, it didn't happen. Like sometimes maybe it's the priority issue, sometimes it's the budget issue, this and that, and it just didn't happen. And then they started saying that this particular campus is getting like increased student enrollment. Good news, right? So they're like, okay, we need to now sort of like start utilizing all the space we have. We need to configure this new lab. So the project team started the project, did everything they were supposed to do. No one ever checked whether there's a stable Wi-Fi or not. And obviously, they did not involve anyone from operations, because if they had, they would have shared like, okay, you do need to think about the Wi-Fi connectivity here. And long story short, day one, can't use the lab because there is no Wi-Fi, right? Surprise. Now that could have been resolved if they had, either appropriate engagement with the operations team or some kind of continual improvement where they have a checklist and the things they can go through. Now they could have got the dedicated network, dedicated router checked, and they would have been able to utilize this particular location for the lab. Or let's say, there are places where you just can't get stable Wi-Fi no matter what you do. I live in such house where like certain part of the house you go to, your phone connection drops. It's kind of crazy. Like, so if I'm on an important call, I make sure I don't go there. And it happens. So maybe, maybe you just wipe it off and you say, we can't use it for anything Wi-Fi related activities. Anything else we can do, but we just can't. So just remember, the sort of the purpose of continual improvement isn't always to sort of, solve every problem you come across, but it's more like, you identify, you have a plan of actions and you do it and you check, and for the most part, you check and you have achieved it, or maybe you haven't, and no big deal, at least Okay. Next one I want to talk about is the one you see a little rectangle box, and this is sort of, this is not so much as a framework, but this is like, how do I get this thing going? Okay, where do I find, like, if I'm looking for improvement, what's the best place for me to look at? So it kind of starts with the performance. If you are measuring your performance, you may have heard like you can't improve what you can't measure, and I think that's quite true. It's like if I have a personal goal to run a marathon and I don't really know like how fast I can actually run today, I don't think I can improve my running methods or my running pace, right? So same thing. This is where you need to look. This is where you're going to get your improvement ideas. Are we measuring performance? Yes or no? Yes, we are. Well, are they aligned with what the business needs? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Well, are we meeting those targets? Yes or no? Yes, we are. Or no, maybe we are not. Okay, if we're not, like, what's the gap? Is it like 50% or is it 1%? If it's 1%, okay, what's the compromise? I suppose if you, I don't know if you guys have SLA or not, but let's say you have your a university website or a college website, and your uptime is like, 100%, 365 days, 24 hours a day, et cetera, et cetera. And you say, well, yeah, 5% downtime is acceptable. I think that could be a big deal if your campus is solely relying on those portals to do absolutely everything for your students. However, in some companies, what I have seen happen is they have the uptime of like 24/7, 365 days a year. But what they do, obviously, they have to maintain, right? So they have to like upgrade, or they might have to change the infrastructure, or they might need to release a new code, et cetera, et cetera. So they kind of have a backup page, or they might have a maintenance page. They never update the whole website at once, but it might be like a small segment, and they sort of send out the pre-advanced notice to say between this time and this time, this section will not be available. I think that's how they manage it. That's kind of an example of improvement. Number two is we need to make sure that there is a commitment. Okay, we are aligned and committed to continual improvement as a team and as a leadership. If you do not have your leadership buy-in, you need to make sure you do get that. Okay, through that you get the resources and you get the budget you need for your improvement initiatives. Like, let's say I was trying to do continual improvement in absence of my leadership's approval. What is likely to happen? Obviously, if I'm someone who just 24 hours just continues to do their work all the time, maybe no one ever notices, but there are probably 7 to 8 hours in your workday, and you have your day job. And then instead of doing your day job, you're probably just going to focus on all those continual improvement. I think eventually someone's going to say, hey, I don't need you to improve. I need you to focus on your day job because that's not getting done. So, I think kind of it's important. And also, I think it helps you to, when you're having those dialogues with your colleagues, your stakeholders, your business partners, there is a more weight when it is an idea kind of a championed by your leadership. It kind of like helps you halfway there, that you're not having to, win the customer over. They understand like, okay, this is our purpose, this is our vision. And number three is your strategy. So this is super duper important. Like, continual improvement should not be done in silo. You need to make sure that all the ideas fed back by the team, by the user, by the customers are aligned with what the business vision is. Let's say you have a service desk and you have a customer who's like, I don't like dialing the phone. I just want to talk to someone in person. Like, I can go to their desk. That's really not gonna happen, right? Even though that is his improvement idea, that's probably not aligned with your strategy. Now, there might be, because I think some businesses, they have like a one-stop IT shop where you can actually just walk to the IT desk and, sometimes it's like, oh my God, I lost my laptop charger, and like you have to wait like 5 days. Instead, if you had that walk-in IT floor, you can just go in and just say, hey, this is my laptop, just give me a laptop charger, and they can just give it to you. So it kind of varies, but it needs to be aligned with what is your organization vision. So for example, let's say your organization strategy is like, we are moving into cloud, and someone wants to build an app, and they're like, no, I can't do with cloud. I actually need an app like in-house, and I need a server in-house. You need to understand why such request is being made, and what's the legitimate reason. Is it because they're afraid that cloud might not always be reachable, then perhaps, or maybe they don't have the skills? You need to address that with communication, assurance, and the training, not build in-house server for them. Okay. And last but not least is the process. So, I think we asked one of the poll questions earlier, right? Like, formal structure, that's important, because in absence of that, like, I have 100 ideas, Mitch has 200 ideas, someone else has another 3. Like, how are you going to prioritize? How are you going to do all this? Instead of like creating a lean structure which you can follow, I think it can become chaotic, over demanding, overworked. So it's important that when you are trying to go on this journey, you have those 4 things aligned. Okay. And the last one, you see, whichever way you're looking at it, that's on my right. When I look at my phone, it may be on your left. Anyhow, this is like super important. My favorite framework to go to, and I do ITIL training as well. And so every time I'm teaching continual improvement, I really can teach this particular framework in my sleep. And they're like, I mean, oh my God, like, how do you memorize this stuff? I'm like, I'm not memorizing. This is something because I'm following, and it's really, really simple. It's like, what is my vision? What exactly I'm trying to do? Where am I now? What steps do I need to take? Where do I need to go? I'm now taking those steps. Did I get there? And then continuously, just, keeping that loop going. It's really that simple. It's a step-by-step method. Like you can use it in your personal life as well. Like I gave a marathon example earlier, right? So like, okay, next year I want to run a marathon, and right now I can run like 5 miles, 45 minutes. So marathon is I think 26 mile. I'm not doing that, by the way, just an example. So it's 26 miles. So I really need to, improve my pace. How do I do that? Well, right food, right training, right support, apply for the entry. Maybe I need to do fundraising, make sure I have a time, blah, 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 the whole planning. I start executing. I keep checking as I like 6 months into it, like how is my pace? Well, wow, I can do 5 miles in 25 minutes. Okay, so I kind of improve my pace by, you know, twice now. So just keep going and then continuously checking, and then all goes well, and I kind of am meeting my target, or perhaps what, I just got an injury because I was kind of like overdoing it, and I got a fracture, and like PT said, you can't do this anymore. I have to postpone it. That's totally fine. But if you follow this framework, it kind of helps you to get there. You're not just doing things in sort of isolation or silo or random. Okay. So I know I kind of have said a lot, but I really hope that this really gives you insight into, there are so many different frameworks out there that you can pick and start using it in your organization to do continual improvement. Are there any questions?
Yeah,
Mitch? I'm not
Dana
getting
did
it.
pop a question in chat if you want to address that. I'll go ahead and answer live here. So,
Sure,
do you see the
sure.
Q&A, or do you want me to read it?
If you can please read it.
Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
So Dana's asking, did you come up with the purple box framework? And I'm assuming Dana means what's on the right, the 7-step CI process.
Okay. Did I come up? No, I did not come up with it. No, this is ITIL. This is, if you've done ITIL Foundation, this is what they teach you. This is not my framework. This is published by PeopleServe. So they have the copyright for it. But that doesn't stop anyone to take this framework and start using it. I hope that answers your question.
And incidentally, the image on the left, whatever side you're on, is also property of PeopleServe or Axelos.
Yeah, yep, same.
Dana, you good? Is that a good answer there? Think you could go ahead and move on.
Okay, all right, awesome. So, Mitch, we can go to the second slide, please. So you might say, okay, this all sounds wonderful, and why am I doing this, right? Like, because if you don't know why, like, like the young kid, you ask them to do something, they're like always like comes back with you, like, why? Like, go sit down there. Why? Can you go get why? Right? So I think it's important that we people to know, like, rather than just being told that, like, okay, you know what, we're just gonna do this thing for us now. The reason I think it's important because we all know like IT is moving super fast now, right? Consumers are becoming increasingly demanding. There is more competition, there is more innovation. Things are changing rapidly. Now, to keep up with it, we need to make sure that our IT organization is aligned with our business needs. And this is what continual improvement will help you with, can help you with. And if done right, it could be really that sort of, the fuel your business needs in order to grow, in order to expand, in order to innovate. And the reason I say that is I see a lot of examples where, students, like if you think about outside of our university, like the life of a student, right? Like things are like super fast, everything's quick, they're all on the phone, always doing things on app. Like I joke like with my nephew, like he would never know what those dial phones were like the, is it rotary or whatever you call them, those old, he would never know because in his generation they're all like touch phones. So if that is our student type and they are requesting that I want self-help on demand, help for my IT issues, and we're like, every time you have an issue, you either email us or you either call us, and there's no chat feature. What's going to happen? Well, for the worst part, probably like a poor customer satisfaction and kind of compromising your IT reputation, that they're not meeting the students' needs, and I mean, I don't know. I really am not at the enrollment side of the business, so I wouldn't really know like how much student actually thinks about enrolling into a class or universities because their IT isn't that fantastic. But having sort of like a adjunct professor role, I do know when I talk to my colleagues, there's sometimes my students like the class I was teaching was about project management, and it took such a long time. So I'm like kind of like going week after week and showing how to do things, and like half the class could not get project management like software they need in order to practice what I'm teaching. And they're like, it's not this hard. Like, who are you calling to get this thing, this software license? I'm like, oh, it's always like this. I mean, this is not unique. We just get used to it, right? So this is the reason why we should be doing it. Mitch, we can go to the next slide,
It can take a
please.
pause for a second. I just saw a question from Jay. I think it's a great question. So back on the slide, and I'll go back one. On the that's 7, I think it's 7 steps now. But yeah, how do we keep momentum going? It's the 7th step. His question is, if we find that an improvement effort seems to be starting off from how do we get there or take action, right? So maybe they start somewhere in the middle. Do you recommend kind of going back to the beginning? What is the vision? And it really, is there an iterative process maybe where you go back and refine something and then move on instead of just being a linear?
Okay, so I think if I'm reading this question, that if you have an improvement idea, we start from how do we get there and take action. I guess if the team or is very clear on, so if you have a vision and strategies defined and you know your current view, and team is starting at, how do we get there and start taking action? It's totally fine. You don't need to go back up there if you're confident. But if you're not sure, like you're like, yeah, I think so, but like I still need to check, then you should go back there. Like, so an example like, could be, let's say student wants self-help chat feature, and that's what you are about to launch, right? So like vision and strategies, we want to make sure we meet our students' requirement. That's your vision. Where are you now? Where are you now is like, we don't have a chat feature. So then how do we get there is like introduce a chat, and then take action is, okay, figure out which application, figure out who's going to do it, who's going to do the project plan, when is it going to go live. So you actually do start at how do we get there and start taking action, and then you launch. And then when you launch, you realize like you have 6,000 students and only 10% are actually using this chat feature. Do you spend your effort fine tuning the chat feature, or do you go back up now to say, okay, this is the vision, why we are not meeting the vision, right? You would go back up there and figure out like why we are not meeting the vision, like what's the issue. You don't stay down there, continue to take action. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great. I'll go ahead and move on to this slide that we were on.
Thank you. We can go to next one, please. Okay, so obviously it's good that we know the framework, we understand why we need to do it. What are the common challenges? And these are the stuff I have put together based on what I have experienced and what I have seen. So, first and foremost, people ask like, okay, how do I start? Okay, it sounds good. Like, day one back at work now. How am I going to start then? Well, you need to look at your team. Like, how big is my team? Is this like a large team where we need a dedicated resource, or is it a small team we can share responsibilities? It really depends. Do I need a process? Yes and no. I mean, if we have the skills and the resources who can draft up the process, get this reviewed, approved, yes, you should do that. If not, you definitely need a common feedback mechanism that you can all agree to. So, for example, you might say, you know what, we're a team of 7 people. Anyone has an improvement idea, make sure you go on this SharePoint, make sure you log it here, put a date, when do you want to achieve this? And when you do this, what do you hope to get out of it? Really simple. And then you need to make sure that you review and you kind of action. Sometimes it's like, no, I don't think, like, let's say ServiceNow space, ServiceNow, every year they do 2 upgrades, right? So they're like, oh yeah, we want to stay latest, and every time they upgrade, we want to upgrade our platform. That's a great idea. Realistically, that's not possible because we don't have that many people. We don't have that bandwidth. So we're not going to do it. Now, It could be that, you know what, you're a large organization and you have like a 50 odd people just doing service now for you with your sixth instance. You know what? Yeah, I think that sounds fantastic. You should be doing it. They're not fully utilized, right? That can apply to anything. Like one of the common thing I hear in education industry is we wait for all of our upgrades and all security patches, this that during the summer where we know like no school is working active, etc. So we're not gonna interrupt the faculties and the student, and by doing so, like a lot of work gets jam packed. So I used to think when they go on holiday, you should be on holiday too. And they're like, no, not quite. We are actually extra busy. Okay. So make sure you do all that. Okay. How do we start? Have the process formal, informal, make sure you have a review, you have assigned responsibilities. Where do we start? Okay, fine, I know how to, but where do I look? Do I look at server? Do I look application? Do I look services, etc.? Well, one of the title principle is start where you are. So, you really need to be spending time with your users, your customers. It could be faculty, students, partner bodies. It could be another team, speak to them. We'll come away with like improvement ideas, suggestions, look at the matrix, what's working well, what's not working well, where industry trends are going, a lot of different places you can actually look at for where do we start. Team and budget. So you have a lot of great ideas. Where's the money, right? Can the great ideas be implemented without money? Maybe if they're small, yes. But for the most part, you need the resources, money, time, budget. So now I do know like if there are compliance related changes coming up, there is always a budget for it, right? So, for example, when the COVID hit, right? I think there were a lot of grants for like universities and colleges that government was giving out. And I think that's how a lot of organizations were able to pivot, sort of not having people come to office, like work from home, getting all those devices, getting Zoom licenses, increasing the infrastructure, etc. So I think if it's the right idea, I would not be surprised that you won't have the sort of like a time and budget for it, and better or worse. So, are there any bad
Wait, sorry,
improvements?
Rina, can I ask a question? Or maybe I'm asking
Sure.
the question that the audience is thinking. So from a time
Sure.
budget perspective, I get it. What about from a skills perspective, right? Do you really need to send anyone interested in continual improvement to like a Lean Six Sigma or teach them about the A3 or any of those sort of Kepner Trago process? Do you need something like that at first? Do you need some sort of baseline, or can you get started like where you're at?
I think you can get started where you're at. Those frameworks can come in if you're like a really mature organization. So like Lean Six Sigma is very much setting stone, and generally that's not done by shared responsibilities. There is a sort of like a consultant or a team comes in, they talk to everyone, they take all your metrics, and then they come up with improvements. So in order to do your continual improvement, you don't necessarily need those trainings or skills. I guess the most important thing here is to remember that you do have an improvement kind of like a mindset, like you understand your users, and I think that's why you need to be talking to them. Like don't do it in your silo. Like don't think, oh, I think if we do launch chat, it's going to be super useful. Like, are those like, are your students calling out for that? If they are, then yes, go ahead. But if this is something you're like, I don't like doing the emails, I rather chat to people. Uh, that's not going to be an implement idea. So yeah, you don't necessarily need those qualifications or those skills. If you have that, it's a bonus.
Okay, that's helpful. Sounds like a scale and scope and really where the improvement initiative is coming from. Uh,
Yeah,
so that's kind of how I'm interpreting the answer. So thanks.
yeah, yeah. And last but not least, like better was like, will I be successful? Am I going to improve things or degrade things? I mean, you know what? There are bad improvements. There are definitely bad improvements. A lot of corporate, I don't know whether they do it to save money or they think they are improving the customer service because they're making them instant. Like how many times, like raise your hand if you have experienced a very bad self chat experience where you're like, go on a company site and Amazon is fantastic. Put that aside, but like Walmart, like I want to return something, and like I go in and I open the chat, like I want to return something, and the automated message comes up and like, put your order number, and you put your order number, and like confirm your email, and you put that, like put your address, like, don't you know, like I'm logged in, you should know all that. Why am I repeating myself? And like, look at the policy and look at this mailing address. Your issue is this product is faulty and I want to return and I want to make sure I get my money back, right? So raise your hand if you have had a bad chat experience. I don't see any hand, but Mitch, I hope you do. Yes, yes, I agree. I agree. And I think
the hands
that's
are definitely going up. So
yeah, good. Because yeah, that's kind of the improvement gone wrong. And I think still companies are kind of churning it out there. I don't understand why. Like if I could talk to those backend team and like you really are killing your reputation. And sometimes people are just there because they don't have an option. Okay. Last but not least, like will I be successful? Well, I would say like if you follow this step, you're more likely to be successful. But even if you're not, at least you tried, and that's kind of a success worth celebrating, that you tried. Okay, it would help you to remember that you need to progress iteratively with feedback. So for example, it's not like day one I'm just going to improve everything here. If your students are asking for a chat feature and you launch that chat feature but you do not see the utilization increase, or people are still using the traditional method, you don't need to keep fine tuning your chat. You actually need to be out there talking to users, trying to understand why they're not using this feature. Is this because they don't know that it exists? Is it because they need much more training? Maybe they need assurance. Maybe some of not using because they're like me, like, oh, when I use Walmart chat feature, it doesn't work. It's not going to work in my university as well. Hence, I should just talk to someone, right? Those preconceived ideas that we all have and we carry, and maybe that's what is preventing me to use this chat feature. So I think that's why you need to spend time and remember, like, progress iteratively with feedback is kind of a really good thing to remember. It's not trying to change everything in day one, but sort of, doing in small chunk and see if it's giving me what I'm looking for, and then iterate, sort of keep going. Okay, well, I think I am tired by talking too much. I hope you found this webinar to be useful. I hope you do take, something from here that you're going to implement back in your workplace. And I am going to put my LinkedIn in a chat and my email address. So feel free to reach out, and I'm going to hand it to Mitch if you guys have any questions.
Appreciate that, Rina. I'm sure there's a lot of other questions people have in mind, and if you do have them and you get a chance to ask them today, feel free to send me an email response, and we'll try to get those answers to you in the recording. As I mentioned, this webinar is being recorded, and you'll get the deck and the recording and the chat log as part of the recording package within 5 business days. Just want to thank. I'll pause if anybody does have questions, because we do have a bit of time. So if you do have questions, just throw them in chat, throw them in Q&A. I'll run through the sort of the outro as you're thinking about questions. And if I'm at the end of the outro and we don't see any questions, then we'll go ahead and just end early. So again, I want to thank Rina for presenting the idea around, okay, good. Thanks, Dana. I'll go ahead and pause the outro and jump into Dana's question. So Rina is asking, how does an organization ensure that improvement efforts are not siloed? That's a great question.
Communicating. So if you guys if you come up with a process, formal, informal, letting everyone know, hey, this is what we are doing, this is on our roadmap, this is how we plan to, do future improvements. If you have an idea, come and tell us, this is how you can tell us, and then advertise it. If you do it, you don't do it, communicate. That's the best way to, let everyone know that, this is what we're doing. Yeah, do not do it in silo. And also another reason is to communicate is because what you may think you're improving, you may actually be hindering someone else's task or work, or you might be impacting their work. So I think it's really important that you communicate and collaborate with other divisions in your business. Don't do it in silo.
That's the collaborate and promote visibility guiding principle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, we've got some time. If you want to take yourself on mute and just ask a question out loud, we've got a small group, so more intimate. So if you want to ask another question, we have a few minutes. If I'll give you like a couple minutes. If I don't hear anybody jumping off or wanting to come off mute, I'll go ahead and finish this this webinar. So just to give a few minutes. Rina, are you working with some organizations to kind of help them get jump started with continual improvement? Have you ever used not to jump on the tool, but have you used some of the capabilities within the ITSM platform like demand management or idea management, any of those things? Do you find them helpful? Do you find you can do that on a spreadsheet?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I teach continual improvement from ITIL. I also have implemented in multiple organization continual improvement in ServiceNow, even giving a sort of like a process training, how to get this started. Actually, one of my thesis when I did my ITIL master was working with the university where I implemented continual improvement as a process. So yes, definitely. I mean, you can do it in Excel too. You don't have to have a fantastic tool. It's just more of having a structure, having an awareness, giving the right training, giving everyone a voice, and communicating, sort of like a 5 core principle that would help your organization get going. Yeah.
Rina, and we'll jump into those 2 questions here, but I want to offer maybe an opportunity to come back because I know based on feedback that I get from a survey, and by the way, everyone who's still here, at the end of this webinar, you'll get a link to a survey. It does help us to understand if these are hitting the mark or what we can improve. But one of the things our community group members always ask for often is case studies. So Rina, if you'd like to come back and present on that case study with working with the university in question around building out continual improvement, I'm sure we'd have a good audience for that. So maybe that's an opportunity you and I can investigate in the near future, if you're open to that.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So another question from Dana about, I've seen where there's ample communication, but there are political considerations that often seem insurmountable, ... So maybe it's just a comment, but do you have any thoughts on that comment? If not, maybe it's just kind of a thought. So I'll jump on the next question. So how would you suggest an organization start on ITIL? What would be good to start with the leadership team? Wow, that's a question and a webinar in and of itself.
Okay, I would recommend email me. I would be definitely happy to help. I might even share a snippet of the masters where I wrote the proposal, why the team needed a sort of a training and what will be the business benefit if the leadership were to invest in this particular, upskilling the people as well as this particular framework. So yeah, I mean, this is a really good question. But what I would say is, do you currently have any knowledge of ITIL?
If you want to come off mute, just to share a little bit, only informally. So. Yeah, you have Rina's contact information, also the list.
Only informally, okay.
Yeah, if you're not part, Nick, if you're not part of the EDUCAUSE community group list, I encourage you to join and ask your question there. You'll get a lot of good feedback and responses as well. Jay has a question here. Where would you recommend a single person responsible? So where would you recommend a single person responsible for formalizing continual improvement across an IT organization focus on their efforts? For example, understanding leadership vision versus gathering staff and customer information or customer improvement ideas. I think if you're a sole person only responsible for continual improvement, you might want to find a different job.
Yeah, no. So I think, yeah. So I have worked for an organization where we had a single person who was responsible for continual improvement implementation. What that means is they look after policy, they look after the process, they look after the documentation, they measure the metrics, they go give workshops, they facilitate meetings, all those wonderful things. The actual improvement comes from the team itself, right? So it's like if you are, and that's why I feel like team size is important. So if you are fairly medium to large team with about 50 plus IT resources, I think you can give this responsibility to one person and say, hey, you are the continual improvement process manager who oversees the framework, the benchmarking, the metrics, the workshop, has the knowledge, and then go around to the teams, implementing this thing. But continual improvement is everyone's responsibility. It's not exclusive to one single
Yeah.
person. Yeah.
That's kind of facetiously, that's where I was going with my response. I took a couple people off mute that were interested in maybe asking a question or follow up. We have a couple more minutes, so if you want to keep this going, happy to stick around. And Rina's, we're here. So if you want to
Yeah,
chime in,
can you hear me, Mitch?
I can hear you, Dana. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is Dana. Yeah, just kind of following up on my other question. It seems that, yeah, I've just, in my experience, there's been improvement efforts, but they've kind of got, started up in one organizational stack. And my thought was, well, maybe if they came from, a higher level, like the president's office or some sort of strategy office, it would be more successful, because higher ed's kind of, very hierarchical. Um, that's my question or thought.
Is this the one? Yeah, is this the one I have seen where there is ample communication, but there are political considerations that often seem unsurmountable? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So you see, I mean, no one ever says this is going to be easy, right? And I think culture, people, boss, budget, business, external factors, a lot of stuff comes into play. And like, if you're really, really keen that, I want to make this a success in my organization, I would say you need to have leadership buy-in. You need someone in the leadership who's going to echo and champion what you want to do. If you don't have that, you're gonna have a really big battle on your hand, and most likely you may not even get that far. Obviously, there are political issues. One has to consider and need to learn to navigate. The best thing I always recommend is put people in central of everything you're doing. So the improvements are happening because it's going to help people, users, customers. It's not about me shining. It's not about me making more money. It's not about me getting promotion. I think you'll get where you need to go, regardless of all those obstacles. Yeah.
Yeah, working from the bottom up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've seen in some cases, Rena, where if you get buy-in or commitment maybe from a leader to have a small sort of tiger team, right? To start maybe as a pilot, you pick a low-hanging fruit or some sort of systemic problem that looks like it might be, fairly straightforward to solve. You just need people committed and using the right sort of tool to get the commitment to start the pilot and then show that some results, and hopefully that sort of spreads and the momentum crosses the entire organization. And for those of you remaining, continual improvement is at the heart of, and I'll shout out to UC San Diego, their Process Palooza. They started out sort of small, but now it's the continual improvement, right? It's based on Lean Six Sigma, but they have an entire culture of focusing on continual improvement and optimization and working with their business partners, not just IT, on the improving end-to-end business processes. So I would encourage you to take a look at Process Palooza and some of what UCSD is doing. All right, I think we're at the 3 minutes, so I'll go ahead and finish my little outro spiel. Again, Rina, thank you for your time. Yes, appreciate everyone sticking around. As a great presentation. Love to have you back, talk about the use case. A reminder that everything is being recorded, and the chat transcripts, the recording, and the presentation will be sent within 5 business days. It'll be linked on the ITSM CG website. We're always looking for fresh ideas. So if you have a topic you want to share, or something that you want to present to the group, reach out to me. I'll help you put it together, make it very easy for you. And then, of course, Rina's contacts on a slide deck. And thank you again for your time. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.